Okay, the P1 first. Based on the new competencies, one of the things that they threw out there that they absolutely insisted upon is that paramedic practice sessions first have to go back into the basic competencies. They want us checking them in individual psychomotor skills and scenarios of some shape, form, or fashion on their basic skills first, and then launching into everything else. Now, originally, when we met last October, I said I didn't think we were going to have to change our schedule, but based on the way that they have built the Platinum Labs, where if you were doing something with one of the other skills and you decided to say throw in a CPR while you were at it, if you hadn't already done the isolated basic competency and the basic competency scenarios on those, they couldn't count credit for it. So they'd be going home or whatever to do their data, and then it would be locking them out. So I did revamp the schedule, and in doing so, I also changed some other things around and scrunched some stuff up, because since we don't have to do as many rote memory skills, or can't, I won't say don't have to, but can't do as many rote memory skills as we were doing before in the way that we were doing them, I did make some rearranging. So and we're gonna probably have to stick closer to these schedules, at least making sure that day 1 and day 2 we get everything done, and day 3 and day 4 you get everything done, and day 5, day 6 you get everything done, etc. But on day 1, it's absolutely mandatory you start here. And this is going to be basically running through all the CPRs, AEDs, choking, and individual scenarios, and then running them through some quick mini scenarios, where you can conglomerate them up. You can do it any way that works, that you feel like that your students are learning, and move them around, change them in places, add things in, take things out, do it simultaneously, because, normally when we're doing CPR, we're doing AED, we're doing BVM and rescue breathing, and when we're doing some of the infant ones and children ones, we can start with choking on some of them and just work them around. But if you see these little numbers in parentheses after these, each student has to document a minimum of that many before they can do these. They have to document a minimum of this many before you can do anything else with them that involves CPR later on down the line. If they're going to be checking CPR on anything in their skills, these already have to be in. So I would say really with CPR, you're basically running them through. They're supposed to be CPR certified before they get to you. Just run them through, and I'll show you how to set up the labs to document this happen. But these items here are probably, majority of this is going to happen before lunchtime, all the way down through this list, or until just right after lunch. So then you're going to go into the trauma skills, same thing. Majority of this stuff's going to happen before lunch. Here we go. Spinal, joint, long bone, traction splitting. Remember, before we had that down on like days 3 and 4, you're going to be doing that up front, and they're going to be doing an online checkoff. And then you're going to have to run your groups through, a couple of scenarios. Now, I'm not telling you that each scenario has to be by student. In other words, if you've got 2 students that each, time that student has to be the one who calls the shots, you just have to run them through the scenarios quickly. And they don't have to be long or complicated, just something real quick. Your patient was in a car wreck, they're still sitting in the car, go. That's what we mean by scenario. So it can be quick, run through, you're checking them off. You're making sure they can still function. If they don't demonstrate they know these things, then just like before, you have to spend more time with them. But if they're doing gangbusters, you and I both know, all of us know, that how many of these they do in front of you really means nothing. It's the demonstration that they do to you from the get-go that means more to me than anything. If it's obvious that your student or students are all that in a box of chocolates and you can see that, run them through one and go. Move on to the next thing. You can worry how you document, but it's up to you to gauge, to make sure that, and that's the purpose of these, that they're proficient in these before you go any further. I had a conversation with Michael about a student that came to one of his sessions in January, and she obviously did not have any confidence. And of course, you know, you can only believe about half, if any, of what a student tells you as their reason why they can't do the skills. But she said that some of the skills they didn't even do in their ENT program. I find that hard to believe, but then again, I've seen some bad programs out there. They still exist, so it's possible. But you guys have been dealing with this. You know what we're dealing with. This is basically shoving this to the front end. Also, in the basic competencies, and these, you notice I have in here, I forgot to say, can be peer reviewed, must be instructor reviewed. On these isolated basic competencies, what that means is they can open up their little tablets or their phones and turn, you know, set up their labs for these, and they can check each other off on these while you're doing something else, especially if you have a larger group. You know, you can have the two of them over there checking each other off on CPR for the basics competency skills while you've got two more over there that you're doing spinal with, and then vice versa. If it says must be instructor reviewed, which is the scenarios, then those are the ones you have to actually sign that you review. You have to be watching them right there. Okay. Intranasal medication, inhaled medication administration, glucometers. They have moved 12 lead EKG placement into P1 first, considering it a basic skill. So it's just basically, if they don't know how to do it, teaching them how to do it, make them do it a couple of times, move on. But they will have to have the little internal skill sheets I'll show you checked off on it, but those can be peer reviewed. Okay, so you can actually have, you know, while monitoring, making sure that this one knows how to put the leads on in the right places and is counting ribs. But once you do that, they can work on each other while you're helping another student. So I would say that all of these items here will probably take you, and you can jump in here if I'm wrong, noon, maybe a little bit after noon to run through all of that. What do you think? You can unmute your mic, say what you need.
I think your CPR is going to be the easiest to finish just because it's basic skills. Take down, put your KED back together, etc.
Right. So if you've got a bigger group, you can be working on, you know, those things while somebody else is working on some of the other ones that are long, and then switch, you know, so the instructor reviewed and the peer reviewed, and then you can shove in the other ones. But yeah, those are going to take the longest, but, you know, keep them moving. Don't let them fart off. Don't let them sit there and gossip. Just keep them moving. Michael, Stephen, Jeremy, you guys have been around doing this for a while. What are your thoughts?
Maybe noon, 1 o'clock is just how many students we have.
Yeah. Stephen put, just like other sessions, when we changed stuff, it took some getting used to, but the first couple of sessions will be tough. But yeah, I think it's just a flow issue. And like I said, I trust you guys to gauge. If they're competent, they're competent. If they demonstrate that to you, it's obvious they know their stuff. Mark them off and move on. You know, don't waste time on things just to meet numbers. And you didn't hear me say that. I may cut that out of the video. I don't really freaking care what their numbers are. What I care is that you guys are getting them through here and making sure they're competent. However, the numbers that we have to put in the reports are what they're going to hold us to for when they check us, when they audit us, and when they come do site visits. So what they fill in the blanks, and what you fill in the blanks, which you'll see later in a few moments, we still have to document it, you know. And the way I look at it is, if they're doing really good and you do, you know, it's obvious they know their spinal immobilization stuff, and you know, started them with the seated and gone supine, and they haven't missed a lick, say, look guys, I'm gonna credit you for the other one. We'll just do a credit. Let's move on. You know, if they know what they're doing, there's no sense beating a dead horse. You're going to have some do and some don't. And I see a chat again. Competency is not based on quantity. COAMPS needs to take a medic class. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Sherlinda. I think Jerry has a saying, and I have to say I agree with it. And it's why I fought getting my bachelor's degree so hard, is the more letters you get behind your name, the dumber you get, because common sense goes out the window. and realistic functions go out the window. So I agree with you. All right. So I'm going to show y'all how to enter all that later, but let's just go through the paperwork here. Now, following the above checkoffs, and I figure the rest of the day you'll be working with the simple airway stuff. You know, like we were doing before, and we have kept those numbers down, but this is still BLS stuff here. This is still making sure that they know about all this stuff and that they can do these skills. So I figured all of this you should be able to do in one day, easily. Where it's going to be a problem is in one-on-ones, but again, we're looking for competency and credits in one-on-ones, and we're just going to have to play this by ear and see if it works. We may end up with one-on-ones not being one day, or one-on-ones are always a long day. You know, y'all are going to have to see how this works, like Stephen said first, before we can make a judgment about what we're going to have to do with it, unless you have opinions before then. But I think it can be done just like we were doing before, since these people are supposed to be prepared before they get to you anyway, as far as watching videos and memorizing skill sheets and just putting their hands on. So we'll see. Day 2 picks up just like we did before, but with BVMs, moving down CPAP and PEEP, entitled CO2. That's usually an introduction for most people. And going through the same things we had before. I did move tracheostomy tubes and stuff up. But remember, we're not doing as many of these as we were doing before for that rote monkey memory, which I really have a bad heartache about, because I think that rote monkey memory works. Because when you're stressed and adrenaline is pumping, that rote monkey memory is what saves your butt. Brian, I see you unmuted your mic. Do you have something to throw in there?
No, ma'am. I'm just listening.
Okay, no problem. All right, so then we come back for day 3. I moved IVs and phlebotomies down to day 3 because we have to front load all the BLS stuff. But since we cut our numbers of IV sticks down to 2 and our blood draw to 1 as far as live, it's not been a problem with getting them anyway. Used to, we had to have 5 IV sticks and 3 blood draws, and sometimes it took 2 sessions to get it. So I don't think there's a problem with that. IO, their medical assessments, trauma, intubation, trauma assessments, and then the OB and neonate stuff, or actually the OB stuff. Now the neonate resuscitation is in P2. And I remember, and Kelly mentioned this earlier, Stephen, you asked this last time, them having a card for the neonatal resuscitation is not going to substitute for what we have to document. We still are going to have to do it. We need to decide. It's harder to come by neonatal resuscitation classes, so I don't know that we can require it in PG didactic like we do the trauma NACLS and cards before they take their final exam. I'm open for opinions on that, but I don't know that neonatal resuscitation is as readily available out there, is it?
I take it every couple of years. It's an online class, and then you just go for a skills checkoff that takes 30 to 45 minutes.
But how readily available is the skills checkoff nationwide, much less statewide?
There are multiple NRP instructors in NICUs. Oh, somebody chatted that they're an instructor.
Okay. So maybe we need to consider that. That'll take an advisory council meeting. I'm going to make a note, discuss adding neonate requirement. It would be nice if they had that under their belt, because then they could just fly through checking off that skill and be done with it. Otherwise, that skill is going to take a little longer, especially since the neonatal resuscitation on top of these is 4 times. And you have these at this level, and you have these again in P2. So that could be fun. Then you see I moved simulation practice starting at the end of day 3 and going into day 4. We're having to increase the number of scenarios, not just the numbers that COAMs for, you know, team leads and team member and those type of things, but they've also added in some that are absolutely required. And then we've had to add a lot of other scenarios where we're going to be running them through over and over and moving them around and little pieces of, and however it takes to make it happen for them to get all of the skills that they have to have. Here's our deal. We do have some busy sites that some students go to where they may very well get the opportunity to work 10 codes. It's rare. And even at places like Dallas Fire Department, it's not you know, in the time period they're going to be there, for them to say get the opportunity to do 10 transcutaneous pacings, what do you think the odds of that are? They might get 1 or 2 maybe, but you know what? I worked full time on the truck, and even when I worked in busy services, I don't think I ever did a transcutaneous pacing in the field on a live patient until I got on the helicopter. Let's see, somebody's saying, I keep seeing the little thing. So I highly recommend it for all paramedics. I've done 3 TCPs in 23 years, exactly. So that means that all of these ones that they have labeled on Appendix G that are live patient or SIMS, or for us SIM scenarios, a good chunk of that stuff's going to have to be done in lab because they're not going to get it in the field. I can't imagine them coming even close to getting a lot of this stuff at Taylor County EMS, even MetroCare. They might get, you know, the majority of it, like I said, if they want to pay to go to DFD or Harris County Emergency Corps or one of those, but the majority of our services are not busy like that. And they're not going to get a lot of the stuff in the ER either. They may see it, but the chance of them getting to do it, to do anything more than just watch, if there's somebody that needs to be synchronized cardioverted, somebody who needs transcutaneous pacing, what do you think the odds are they're going to pull up the paramedic and let them do it? What do you think the odds are they're going to let the paramedics at all in OR ever intubate a pediatric patient? Those are slim and none, even in our ORs that allow intubation. When it comes to the PD patients, they get very, very, very territorial and very protective. So that's why we're going to be doing the things we're doing, including moving this up to here. Days 5 and 6, if these are not completed there, and I'll show you how we're going to track it, and it will be when you have them coming in for P1 testing, the first thing you're going to be doing is looking at their paperwork and seeing where they are in simulations. You'll be finishing up the simulations before you start testing, and then you'll be doing your final summative testing just like before. So that's the first part. I did make some changes. You'll want to keep reading in here, not much, but go through and make sure you're familiar with this sheet all the way down through. And I didn't make any real changes in the testing pages of this sheet because, like I said, other than finishing up SIM scenarios, you're not going to have much change on testing day. Now, tying into that, you remember this sheet I showed you at our last meeting? I found a couple of little errors, and I can't even remember to tell you where they were as I was finally building it all. But pretty much this sheet is about 95% the way it was at the last meeting, but I'll show you where to get the newest version of it here and before we leave today. So these, remember, are the ones that we talked about that we had before, like these. We had like 10, and then they had to come back in P2 and get 5 more, you know, those type of things. Everything on this sheet that's marked in yellow corresponds with a skill that they're going to have the competency based, well, not really basic competencies check sheet, but a competencies check sheet in platinum first, X number of times, like 2 for pleural compression, before you can do anything in scenario, and then before you can move it out into doing them in SIMS. It's easy to do. I'll show you it's not as painful as I thought it was going to be. And in fact, even when you're the one who's observing, you know, it's up that you're required to do like scenarios rather than peer reviews. There's a feature where you can just allow them to type in your name rather than you having to go over and physically sign everybody's chart, because they still have to submit it all to you. You still have to review it all, and then you still have to click accept or not to say that yes, what they said was true. So you won't have to sign everything as they go. You can show them how to do it, and I'll show you how to do it. But you'll just have to be careful to make sure that they're doing it and that everything is there, and it'll be a learning curve. So you'll probably need to take these competency sheets and study them a lot, and then study them again before you do your first session where you have people with the new stuff coming in. Okay, the same skills are there. There's just a few additions as far as that goes. You remember the 12 lead. You know, we've had to add in more definitive on the CPR and the choking. We've had to add in the the newborn deliveries, you know, with normal and abnormal deliveries. But we were kind of doing that before. We just had to add in numbers of those. So I think where this is going to be most changed is what you have to do before you can do something else. Does that make sense? Anybody got I don't think it makes sense? I'm trying to pull the chat up here. Sherlinda said yes. How about the rest of you?
Yep.
It seems pretty straightforward.
Okay. Stephen, I guess you clicked on your camera instead of your microphone, but I guess that's a yes.
Sorry, my computer died. Like died. So I'm back.
No. Okay. All right, you're back.
You were saying something about the NRP and and it just died.
Oh no, that's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, in a nutshell, you'll want to go back and review the skill lab stuff here that you might have missed in the discussion. Okay, to see where we're going to be doing stuff, and then you'll want to look real closely again, probably get to know these competency sheets real closely. Remember, the yellow means it has to be checked off in Platinum first before they can do scenarios. And if it has little asterisks there, it also means that the scenarios have a check off in Platinum. But I'll show you how to find it. It's not as hard as it looks. They actually did a good job of pulling it together. Somebody's got their microphone staying on and I'm echoing, I think. Maybe not, maybe it's just me. Luann, do you have any comments? Michael? Kelly?
Not yet.
All right, Luann, makes sense, just very in-depth. Yes, ma'am, it is. Jeremy, yes. Hi, Jeremy. I forgot to tell you hi when you pumped in. Okay, now we're going to go and look at the way we pull it together, but there's a new form that's going to be added. And this one's kind of interesting. At the end of each day, which the student's going to bring this with them, supposed to bring this with them, their name goes here. So you'll be circling like P1 practice days 1 and 2, you'll circle that one. When they come for this one will be circled. When they come for this one will be circled. If it's P1 testing, it'll, you know, you can circle all of it if you want, or just circle this one because it's a challenge. And basically, it has to do with these scenarios. This is the new scenario list for P1. And Sherry is in the process of pulling together the 2019 student books now. But there actually is, for each one of these P1 and P2, there's a specific order with the name of the lists. And I'm going to show you when I get into Platinum where to find them, how to find them, but you have to use those scenarios now. Because the way that I built them, I pulled them away from Platinum if they weren't ones that we had written before, and even for some of the ones we've written before. And I modified them to make sure that a lot of the skills that are required that are sim skills, which, this stupid thing keeps getting in the way. Sim skills being these things over here in that simulation column, that they're starting to be covered. See, because, you know, like here you got 6 direct orotracheal intubations PD, 1 each of these, this, that, and the other, where I've got them incorporated into scenarios. Now, that one scenario, I know it's gonna be impossible for you to do one scenario 6 times. But what I envision that would probably work, and you'll have to see, is that like for these ones that you have to have more of them to make things work, you know, just because it's a sim or scenario doesn't mean you have to do it from the time they walk in the door with a new kit to the time they've given a patient report. You know, do what works. Get their hands on the equipment. You know, take portions of the simulation and put it back and shift them around so that the one who intubated last time starting an IV now. Or, okay, the same scenario, but let's shift. Now you're the one who's drawing up the drug. Mate, let's do it. Draw it up. I want you to give the correct amount of drug to this patient. You know, make it work, but put their hands on it, make them do it. If they, you know, don't get it right or they're fumbling, then yeah, run it again and again until they get it together. But these numbers over here or in some shape, form, or fashion what it takes for me to be able to give credit. So basically what I'm telling you is, like say you start on P1 days 3, which is where simulations start, and 4, and you're going to start working your way down through these scenarios, and you get
Hey, Jane, I think we lost your audio.
Do we just lose Jane altogether?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And apparently now I'm the host, so
Oh, congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's an unexpected privilege.
You're doing a marvelous job. It sounds a lot easier when she's not giving instruction.
You know, I'm just glad I only test EMT.
So this doesn't count for the EMT. This is just P1 and P2.
I'm going to ask, but I'm going to hope not.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think I need to go back to basic.
It's gonna be a nightmare doing these.
Yeah, that's going to be rough. I thought it was rough before.
Yep.
I don't think.
So we're
one
actually
session's
going to have,
anything.
if I understood it right, we're actually going to have to start using the little tablets.
I think so. And
It sounds like they have to sign off on stuff for us to even be able to sign off on stuff.
yep. Hmm.
How many of y'all have tablets
I have one
in your skill station, or is it yours?
one that I use for the business.
Okay.
Most of them, luckily, most of them come with their own, but still.
That's true.
And
Yeah, we
Sherry-
had three. We had 3 in Abilene, and then we came up 3 short.
I think Sherry has a couple now locked up.
Good.
I mean, they don't do us any good locked up, but they're locked up.
Yeah. Well, I've got the lock to put on that storeroom door in Abilene, and then get all the instructors' keys that teach in Abilene, so we can lock everything up. But so we have to start with CPR now and run through all that stuff she was talking about getting done before lunch. Did I understand that right?
Yeah. You have to check them off on all that stuff before you can start the practice.
Huh. So when she was talking about neonatal, is she talking about PHNRP?
I was lost on.
sorry about that.
But I was assuming she was probably going to start talking about, NRP, the neonatal resuscitation program.
Right. Because we have to keep our PHNRP to fly, and they have an app that you can download on your smartphone that comes with the algorithm and all the justification and research behind why they suggest doing what you're doing.
Oh.
But I don't have a clue where to get a PHNRP class at, because we just have it given to us.
Right.
You
Sorry
said
about that. I didn't mean to disappear. My internet booted me off.
Well, the instructions got a whole lot easier when you weren't here.
I bet they did. Oh, anyway. All right, picking up where we left off. Okay, so that means this sheet that we're talking about, at the end of day 2, there'll be some of this filled out. So when they come in for days 3 and 4, if you're teaching days 3 and 4, you need to look at this sheet and see where they are in scenarios and try to get as much of this, hopefully all of it, wiped out before the end of that session. If you don't, then of course when they get to P1 testing, you're going to ask to see this sheet, and you're going to look to see what they have. Now, we all know students are not the most competent sometimes about bringing their paperwork with them. I do highly recommend that you keep a copy of this sheet every time. Stress to them that they have to take it to the next session or they risk not being able to complete everything. And if they know where their next session is, and you know they've already got it set and say, yeah, well, my next one's already scheduled, say with Michael Eddy, then maybe you could shoot a copy of that over to Michael just to be on the safe side. Don't tell the student you're doing it. But it would be very difficult for me to get these to each individual instructor, because just so you understand, you know, when you look at that skills calendar of all the skills that are going on in any one given month, I'm having to talk to these students, set them up, if they're one-on-one, go through all that process with them, set up the sessions, send out all the paperwork, and then whenever it comes in, I'm having to check to make sure, or hopefully try to make sure that they've set themselves up in Platinum if that's applicable. And then when the paperwork comes in per session, it takes me about 20 minutes. It depends on the size of the session, whether it's P1 days 1 and 2 or if it's a testing session. For a P1 days 1 and 2, 3 and 4, or one of those type, it takes me about 20 minutes per student to check in the paperwork. Fill everything out, fill out the forms, post everything. If it is a testing session, it takes me 30 minutes plus per student to check in everything. So you guys are doing a lot of paperwork, but so am I on the back end for all the sessions. So it would be very difficult for me to remember to pull this and send it to their next session. So that's why in here I'm putting it on the student. This form must be taken by the student to the subsequent sessions. It is the responsibility of the student to ensure that the instructors assigned it filled it out. Students who do not present this form at each lab and do not complete all necessary lab and SIMS requirements will be required to schedule a later practice or testing session to complete, and they're going to have to pay the rescheduling fee to do it. I don't know how else to do this unless anyone here has a suggestion. Now, we could make it an online form, and maybe we'll do that where they can just pop in somewhere and fill them out, or you can sign them online, but that's for the future, not for getting this off the ground, because I figure we'll probably have to make some changes on it, and I don't want to get too caught into something that's going to be more difficult to change at first. Anybody got any suggestions or recommendations on that?
I mean, other than just sharing a Google Drive file with everybody, I don't see another way to do it.
Well, that's a thought. That's a thought. We could set up one Google Drive folder where these just get dumped in by student name alphabetically, last name. Then if they don't bring it, you just go in and scroll through it and find it. Would that work? And then it would just be, while you're uploading to me, you would take that one form and go dump it in another folder. Just a thought. I'll let you guys discuss that too, and we'll come back to that. Okay, P2. I didn't make hardly any changes in P2 at all, except I'm kind of scrunched some things up. You know, remember, we're not having to spend as much time, but in P2, a lot of these are new skills for them. So these things up here, especially like RSI, are new skills, while as CPAP and PEEP and this stuff shouldn't be so much new. They should already, you know, while you're teaching them to throw on a 12-lead EKG in the P1 lab, you know, you usually teach them how to put the 3, 4, and 5 on. The expansion here would be teaching them how to do the extra leads, like, you know, doing the right ventricular lead, or doing a 15 lead, showing how to do those extras at this level would pretty much be where you're doing that here. I don't see doing that at P1. Those extra little goodies would be here. Static EKG is going to be the same. Dynamic, cardiac assessment, here's where you're going to be doing the couple of more of those things. And neonatal resuscitation beyond normal care. There will be 4 of them we'll look at that you'll have to do. And again, these are not full blown. I mean, you'll start with scenarios and then move it around, change it up, do it so that you're getting them where they're comfortable with what they're doing, kind of like what you did at NRP and ACLS. But we'll have to document the 4 in whatever shape, form, or fashion you do it. And then day 3, OB pediatric patient assessment. So we're continuing with that, going into dynamic oral stations, and then starting formative proficiency SIMS scenarios on day 3. Coming back in, finishing up some more of this stuff, kind of breaking it up as going through some more mega codes, some more oral stations. And some of these mega codes you can actually kind of work on at the same time you're doing your SIMS. If you do your paperwork right, you're going to have to document the mega codes. But if you're doing a cardiac arrest in the SIM, isn't that a mega code? So you can be creative about how you document some of this stuff and have the students document some of this stuff that way as well. By just doing things together, you know, these patient assessments that we're doing. Once you're sure that they can do the histories and stuff, and they're doing their assessments, they're doing that again and again and again with every one of these SIMs. So there are ways to make this work, as long as you put some effort into trying to find creative ways to conglomerate things. 7 and 8. Again, complete, just like we're doing in P1, completion of any formative proficiency simulation scenarios, and then starting the skills testing. The final proficiency clearance testing is going to remain the same. Those scenarios are remaining the same for now. And then the mock national registry review and preparation for both levels. You do the same, remember, at the end of P1. If anyone's planning on testing AEMT, don't forget to run them through that and make sure they're comfortable with testing. And then the same with P2. Sheet hasn't changed a lot other than that. But again, remember about the dishonesty clauses, and be sure you make sure that they understand that you're looking at that they're documenting honestly as far as what you've told them to document and how they're documenting and putting things together as well. P2 comps, this one's a little easier actually than P1. There's not as much of that yellow stuff. And I don't think I found any errors in this one. I may have found one when I went back again from October's meeting. But we're mostly scenario and SIMS at P2 level on most skills. Remember, this over here is your credits of the stuff that they should have already gotten from P1 or P1 challenge testing. But see, here's the neonatal resuscitation beyond routine. They're going to have one, they're going to have to do like kind of a competency check sheet, and then it'll roll from there to kind of really mini scenarios, and then you'll launch them into the actual SIMS, and that's where you're going to get these. So that's going to increase your number of SIMS scenarios. IV piggyback drip is one that you're going to have to do a couple of check sheets on. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Synchronized cardioversion, but then remember there's scenarios and SIMS. And like I said, there's no way they're going to be getting a lot of these. Like, you know, we talked about this at the advisory council meeting. And the odds of them getting 4 neonatal resuscitations, even if we increased the number of rotations they pulled in OB, are slim and none. So that's why we're going to have to do them here. But I think it's going to be some coordination, some figuring out how to make a lot of things work at one time to check off a lot of stuff while still getting them comfortable with what they're doing. So it's going to be more putting them in the scenarios, more putting them in the situations while they're practicing these things over and over again. Now, I didn't point out to you, and I guess I should, just like on this one. Oh, let me move this over again. In the AEMT scenarios, they are requiring a minimum of 1 pediatric respiratory distress and failure. So when we do respiratory and distress and failure, the scenario I chose is pediatric because they're requiring it. They're requiring 1 pediatric blunt trauma. And in P2, see, there's the credit for that one. And we're adding in the pediatric adult trauma. And then, of course, here's the other ones there that we've added here at the bottom. See, these were, and actually, wait a minute, let me go back. I think I found an error. Nope, there it is. But I need to add the word adult there. PD and adult. Let's see what I did. PD and adult trauma. I'll go back and fix that. Let me make myself a note so I don't forget. AEMT comps, Sims, penetrating one adult. Okay. And here's the rest. Chest pain. Here's the fun ones. But these are your mega codes. So while you're doing the mega codes, you can utilize the Sims to do those at the same time. You know, at least the minimums. 5 of them for cardiac rhythm disturbances, so I've selected 5 specific ones. And one of them has to be an adult. The rest of them can be geriatrics, pediatrics. Stroke, they are requiring 2 strokes, and one has to be geriatric. The other can be any age group. And they've added in things like abdominal pain, psychiatric conditions, that's a fun one, shock, and sepsis. So you can see there's a lot more of the required sim scenarios than we had before. But that's why we're shoving them up some and cutting out some things. One of the other things you probably noticed I cut out of P1, bringing that up, in the skills lab schedule was that section where you sat down with all the drugs and you went over through all the drugs, the basic drugs, the intermediate drugs, made sure they understand packaging, dosing, and all of that. I've moved that to videos. And now I have 2 video lectures I'm putting into P1 that they're required to watch. Hopefully they'll watch them. And I think that also will help some with that being the lowest topic area that they tend to score on the AEMT exam. I'm hoping that by moving that back into didactic so that they have that before they get there and they can watch that video multiple times if they need to, that maybe it'll improve their performance in those sims when they have to deal with medications, I hope. Third form, P2 formative. And now this is in addition, we're still keeping the IV fleed form. We're still keeping the endotracheal tube tracking form. We're still keeping the entry-level proficiency form. But for P1, it now has a formative sim practice check sheet. P2 has the same, and it works exactly the same way. You'll circle what session they're in or have the student circle what session they're in. And then when you start those sims, you'll start with cardiac rhythm disturbance. I'll show you where to get the scenarios, and there'll be books. And you'll work your way down, signing, and then they'll go to days 5 and 6. And if when they get to P2 testing, there's any left, hopefully there won't be many left, but there may be, you'll start there, finish those, then go through testing and go through the scenario testing. So I tried to pattern these sessions where the paperwork was mostly the same, where it looked the same. The difference is going to be in that how you organize it all and how you get them to claim their credits. Okay? So far, so good? Any questions? I got chat. No questions from Sherlinda. How about the rest of you guys? You can either type or chat or unmute and let me know.
Nope, it's making sense so far.
Oh, I'm glad it's making sense to you, Brian, because it still don't make sense to me. All right, Lou said good. Jeremy, not till I try one. Yeah, that's probably where it'll all turn into mass confusion. But, you know, Stephen said it correctly. First couple of these are going to be rough until you hit your stride on it. Okay, now, let's see, I believe the next thing we're going to do is look at how we're going to set these up in the data entry. I don't want to close Microsoft Word. Get rid of that. All right. I'm going to actually bump in as a student. I had them create me a student account because you'll have to help the students. Now, when your students come to P1 practice days 1 and 2, or when they come to P1 testing and they're a challenge, they're going to require more instruction there than they will at any other time on this. And that's also where most of this is front-end loaded. When you do the P1 testing for challenge, you're going to have to do the P1 testing for challenge. You're going to have to make them create at least their basic competency labs there so you can check those off, preferably do it all before they leave and get it all done, because that's less messy that way. But if you don't have them do the basic competency labs creations first and finish that so you can grade it, then they're going to find that there's some things they can't see. They can't give themselves credit for it, even though it's in those competency worksheets that they're supposed to be giving themselves credit for it, or in the practice sessions, and they're not going to be able to do it. So here I am, I'm signed in as a student, and here's the labs. This is what their login looks like now. And they're going to be going to my labs, just like normal, and they're going at the P1 practice session, the first one, or at the end of their P1 challenge testing before they go, they're going to have to go in and create a lab. Now I'm going to show you what I've already done first, and then I'm going to show you how it works. You can see here I have a basic competencies lab, and I have a basic competencies scenarios lab. This is consistent with that very first stuff that they do on day one, the stuff that you got to hit the ground running with when they get there. And they need to create, very first thing, they need to create a lab for themselves for basic competencies. So they're going to go in, they're going to create a new lab. They're going to select the class. They're going to select the lab name. If they haven't typed anything in there, they can. That's, you know, mine's there because I've already typed it. The lab start date, the lab end date, I'm going to leave it today. Create a new lab. Dogs want in the session again. Now, when they get here, shows that they haven't added any skills yet. Okay? Forms, lab documents, submit lab. They're going to have to add skills. Now, here's the fun part. Here's where you're going to have them click first on basic competency. I like how Platinum did this. They made this almost idiot-proof for us. If they click on basic competency, those first skills that they have to have, the little check sheets, are the ones that come up. Now, I've got some here that are completed because I've already done this. It's me as a student, but they would all come up as brown first. And you're going to have them over there doing their peer review, checking off their 1 and 2 rescuers and their breathing, or you're watching them and they're doing this stuff. Just run them through everything. Then have them sit down, create their lab, or you can tell them to create it at first, and as they do each one, document it. Either way you want to do it. And let's say they did this one, and this one, and this one. Okay. Close. Now it's going to come up here. They're going to have to come here, add their attempts for their 12 leads, and I think they had to have 2. So it was about, we'll say we did that now. Oh, well, we don't have to have an age for the first one because this is the basic competencies. So age type, it was if I had students in here, other students in this group, they would be able to click those peer reviews, or otherwise they'll click my instructor. And they'll go instructor evaluator. This is the fun part. If it was the student, they'd type the student's name in there. If you are watching them, just tell them to type your name in. It's going to come back to you. But tell them just keep doing it. Keep going through it. Time started. What time did you start that skill about? Oh, 16:04. And if everything was great, it's all defaulted to 2 in here. They did finally listen to me on that. Okay, if there was any problems, then they're going to need to change it. Their evaluator's going to need to change it. But if they did a good job, everything's great. It's evaluated at 2. If they acted right, professionally, willingness to learn, yada, yada. And you might have them look at these first real quick before they go through, especially if they're peer reviewing each other, to make sure that they know what the standards are, because I tried to print these off to provide them to students in advance so they know how they'd be graded, and there's no way to do it. Any critical criteria, of course, that means that something up here has to match. That means they failed it. All right. And student self-evaluation. Did you do it good? Do you think you did it right? Yes, no. If they have unsuccessful, then there probably needs to be some comments here. Well, student didn't think they did it, but I saw them do it. Evaluator's name. They can type your name in here. By entering the name, represents the electronic signature. If you want to sign everyone, you can here with the pad, or you can just tell them to type in the name. You'll grade it later. Whichever way you want to do it. And then, of course, was it successful or not? Save. So you're going to have them doing this paperwork here. But you have to do all the basic competencies first. And see, there's 2 of these that were required. Automated, however many on the scenarios, and they have to add them. And then either the peer has to grade them or they need to fill out the paperwork for you. And you say, fill it out, just go in there. You did 3 of them, fill it out. I didn't see any problems, sign my name, I'll grade it. But if there were problems, then you need to fill it out, mark the problem, everything the first time. They're just not. So they are going to look for some of these to be unsuccessful and that they were corrected. So don't let them go by and just grade the successful ones. Make sure you've got some of the ones that they screwed up on documented as well. I know and you know that a lot of this is basic, busy paperwork. We know that. But you're still going to have to document some of the times that they did things not so good, even though and I know I do it too, we just keep running them through, and then document when they're good, because that means they're doing it. That's not what all they want to see. They want to see progression. They want to see that they went from a novice to an expert. So sometimes that happens, document it. All right. And of course, they will be adding things in. And when they get done with that, they can add more skills. They just keep pushing that button to add until all of these are done. All right. By grouping. Now, when you're ready to do the scenarios part of that, and of course, and when they're finished with all these, the very last step they're going to do is submit lab. If they don't submit the lab for review, you can't see it on your end to grade like normal, and you do have to grade it. So tell them when they've got all those little boxes turned to green after you're all practicing, they've signed everything, make sure they submit their lab. Then during lunch or before you start anything else, you can just sit there and quickly grade all the labs, because until they're graded, you're not going to be able to document the scenarios they did to it. Now, you may have this all run as a sequence for that first section of the class, get to the end of day 1, and then sit down and go back and do the documentation for it. That's fine. I don't care how you do it, as long as it's done and as long as these people are getting credit for all their labs. So they need to create that and submit it. And they will create another one for those little scenarios that they have to have the check sheets on, and those little scenarios that have the double asterisks on them, they have little check sheets in here too. And basically, let me show you what that looks like. Create a new lab. P1 2019. Of course, they'll have to type in basic competency scenarios, create lab. This time you're going to have them go in and push this button. And see all those skills that you have to do, the little mini scenarios. It's a 68-year-old male, he done fell out, go. For some reason, that's a scenario. And that's okay. So running them through again, doing this anyway, getting them to document so their minimums are documented. Now, then you're going to be getting to where they'll be documenting individual scenarios, or individuals and individual scenarios, see how they change. These are the ones that are our stuff. See these? Airway monitoring, airway positioning. So I put all those under here and under here. So your minimums have to be documented there. Live IVs, live EKGs, you can have them put here. Live IVs you can put here, it'll feed into the right places. Okay? So I would say use these buttons here. Don't click on all classifications or it's going to get confusing. I wouldn't recommend having them click these. Have them open up everything they're supposed to do. And then they can create another lab to finish up until all of them are done. Because the nice thing for them, and this is pretty cool, is when they go to my labs, after you've graded and everything's turned in, they can actually see where they are. Basic competency. I say I haven't submitted any for grading of this, but I did on this one just to go back as an instructor and see. and I accepted and graded, and whenever I accept and grade, it kicks back and feeds into this report. And so they can come back and view and make sure that they got credit for everything. And if they didn't, then when they come back on day 2, or they can email you and say, hey, I didn't get credit for these. Did I just not enter them? And then they can create a lab, finish it, those type of things. And they can see exactly what they've done. Now, these individual process labs and scenarios here, these don't have any you can't get there until you've done these necessarily. You can't do these until you've done these. Okay? So just so you understand how that works. And if you've got all these done at the beginning of P1 in the first session, then everything else from here goes on. Just like it was before, only these little buttons will help get them into those isolated skills when they create the lab. Any questions so far before I launch into scenarios? Michael, it'd be nice if Platinum would flow things together better, like when they do any of the airway skills, that automatically gives credit for airway management. Yeah. Or when they do a cardiac arrest scenario, they get credit for CPR, portfolio, and medical cardiac assessment. Yeah, I can see though. Yeah, you're right on the airway management one, exactly. And that's actually one I'm going to ask them why. That's a good question I've been meaning to ask about in our, I'm actually on their advisory council, why they don't feed into the airway management line. But on the cardiac arrest scenarios and getting credit for CPR portfolio and medical cardiac assessment, some schools want them separate. They run them through this and then they run them through that because they don't think. You guys have learned over the last few years how to think on your feet and make a lot of things out of one scenario, for instance. This is a new concept for a lot of schools. So we just have to be better at making sure our students know they give themselves credit on everything they did in every place it belongs. But I do like that little chart that comes up where all those skills are isolated though, so they can see how to give themselves credit. Where it gets funky is where we're going to be given credit for the scenarios, and you're going to love that one. For now, it's all going to be on me, which is going to tack on my amount of time for processing skills until I get it off to a science enough where I can build a video to make the students do it. But for now, it's going to have to be me. Any more questions so far? And what I'll do is, I don't mind sharing my username and password to my Platinum Planner account for you. And y'all can sign in as me and sign in as a student like you saw me do at the beginning and come in here and play with this. You're not going to mess anything up, because whenever I'm ready to actually start putting students in and getting stats and reports out, I'll just flag myself so that I don't show up in any reports. So you may want to get in here and play with this, and I'm good with that. Scenarios. Manage scenario documentation. That's going to be from the instructor aspect, just like it is now. But I want to show you how to get to the scenarios on the list. First off, lists, those are in order. Those pages I showed you. So when you go into manage scenarios to create your scenarios for your group, add new scenario. Whoops, that's not what I'm after, am I? Is it manage scenario documentation? I always forget how to do this. You guys do it all the time. Tell me what I'm supposed to click. Yeah, there we go. P1 space 2019 will actually bring up all of the approved scenarios. Ooh. Wait a minute. I'm doing something wrong. That's not what I'm after. Guys, where is it that you start this stupid thing? I did this earlier and I can't remember how.
You have to create the scenario before you can edit the documentation.
Right. Okay, yeah, you're right. I'm trying to show you how to get to them so you know where these are too. So you're at P1 2019. Nope, you're right. God, I thought I could get there this way, but I guess I can't. All right. No. All right. I'm being stupid. I did this earlier. I don't want to create the scenario. I wanted to show you where the list was, and I went to it earlier to show you that the list was there.
Is it under the templates?
Maybe. Because I was going to show you where the list was, and then you'll be able to use, I've made a copy of it inside the book. How the heck did I do this? Oh, I did this earlier. Because you have to go by the name, and if you type in the name, you'll go straight to it. Ah, there we go. There it is. Okay. Now, these are the scenarios that you have to use for P1. And then I've listed the P2 ones done in the same format. P2 space 2019. They come up this way. Okay? These are all the available scenarios. Now, what I want to show you is, hang on just a second. My computer rebooted and I had Google Drive open for you. And it knocked it off. Give me a sec. It's going to run really slow too because I'm on here, so. And it decided to take everything back to Spanish after it rebooted. How you like them apples? Come on. Oh wait, I know why. Let's just do this. I was a smart person. Ah, dang it. I don't want Google Translate. Sorry. Now, go to the right one, it would be great. Like I said, Sherry's making the books. I just want to show you the order and how things are going to be in the book. You'll still have your old books for now, and you're going to have to use the testing scenarios out of the old book for new students because they're the same. And then once we finally close out all the old people that are in the stuff before January of this year, we'll then move those scenarios over to the new book or whichever ones we're using. And I don't care about those, which ones you use on the testing scenarios. The only ones that matter are the formative practice scenarios. Those are the ones that we have to cover, the specific ones that I've selected before the end of the P1 sessions and then before the end of the P2 sessions so that it meets everything in Appendix G. Okay, skills lab paperwork. All right, finally. And this ties into the next item too, which is where all this stuff is. I put it as the last item on my agenda, so that's okay because I want to show this to you. Okay, P1. For students that were starting skills, and this is something I want to talk to you about here in a few minutes, but starting skills that have to be in this requirement, I have added a section. Let me put this in list form. Let me do this. Come on. All right, see I have skills lab paperwork 1, well then I went too far, 1/1/2019. I like mine in icon form, sorry. That's where I put all the paperwork that's going to be in the new books in the lab. And it's where you can get all of the paperwork for the students that are going to fall into these categories from now on. And I did put the stuff outside the folders here in order. The AMT Skills Lab schedule, the competencies, there's the IV checklist, the procedure competency for endotracheal tubes, the entry-level proficiency form. P1 check sheets we'll talk about in a few minutes. Then P1 formative scenarios. This is where the changes, other changes are. Here's that P1 formative sim scenarios sheet that I told you about. And this one is the sim scenario list in order. This will be a page in the book, but it's all those scenarios by name that we had over here in Platinum a moment ago. There. Okay, that's P2, but by name, but they're in order here, and it marries up to the order on your sheets or your sign-off sheets. So you're going to want to have this list there, because when you're in Platinum, you'll need to type in P1 space 2019 dash respiratory, and then it'll come up so that you can make sure you're using the right scenarios. And you know, whereas before we had some leeway and we could use these and that, we need to be using the ones we've picked so that we make sure to give credit. Now let me explain to you why. As they're going through those and they're doing these skills over and over, and you're moving them around so that you're doing the minimums, you know, and some of them are pretty big minimums, like 6 of this one and 5 of that one. And like I said, it may not be full ones. It may be just moving around and variations on a theme. That's fine. But these students need to be practicing these skills in this format over and over. And then for these sim scenarios, these are not being documented. Now the scenarios, you're still going to document these scenarios like you always did. You're going to select them, and they're going to go into that report just like they always did as team leader or team member. But that sheet that comes back to me, I then have to go into the clinical side of Platinum for them, create a clinical site for that lab, and enter in their competencies, their SIMs, as skills there. The SIMs don't go in, the actual skills don't go in the lab that you're entering. Only these topics, and whether they're team leader, team member, pediatric, geriatric, adult, those are the ones you're entering. I'm going to have to go in and enter the actual, they had, before it's over with, 10 times at doing defibrillations, and 10 times at doing synchronized cardioversion, and 12 times at doing adult intubation, and 12 times at doing pediatric intubation. All of that I am having to enter in their clinical side as credits, adjusted credits based on simulations. So that's why this sheet is so highly important to me when it's all said and done, because each day, and I forgot to show you at the bottom of the sheet, you're going to sign. So you're filling in your name up here, print your name, sign it at the end of each day. And I gave extra lines in case they have to go to extra sessions because they didn't take their sheet or whatever. But I'm taking this sheet and actually adjusting and give them their simulation credits, because the simulation credits are simulations or live patients. So the way that it's said is I have to give it to them in the clinical side. And like I said, eventually, once I get used to it and get it down to a science, I'll probably make a video and make the students do this. But for now, when the stuff comes back into me, I'm going to be doing it until I make sure that it's going to work, that everything feeds in like it's supposed to be into the final report correctly. Because their stuff for the skills portion of this will actually land, let's see, let me go to reports. Un momento, por favor. Come on. It's running slow because I'm running video. Bear with me. Remember how everything that you guys give them credit for has to go in here. The lab basic competency skills, which now has its own category. Remember how I showed you that? And then here's the basic competency scenarios. Here's the individual skills progress for all of our other skills that we're requiring individuals. And I've set up the numbers that they have to have. Individual scenarios. Now, some of this is not required in scenarios, but if it is required, then it goes in there. And if not, it's extra goodies. Here's the pathologies for what you're doing. This is where it feeds. Those pathologies of all those selected scenarios will feed in here and fill all this out. And so not all of these are required, by the way. In other words, we're not doing necessarily six of these. The required ones will fill out and go to green. All these ones that are in blue, these are optional. If they go, then it'll fill out there, but it won't turn these green. The ones that are 0%, these are the ones that when you're done have to all be green. And then here's that part from before where it feeds in the adults and team leads, but see all those scenarios will fill in here and up there. My stuff, where I'm going to have to adjust them, goes down here. Before, this was Tammy's area only. Now, this will be Tammy in my area until we get to the point where we can figure out how to get the students doing this without making errors in it. Maybe never. I don't know. But this is where I'm going to be entering in, and that stuff will end up being in adjusted columns here that I have to explain to site visitors when they come. And of course, the explanation being is that my skills instructors and examiners, or my skills instructors, are doing this all in the SIM scenarios, and those SIM scenarios are structured so as they're going through, they're getting those competencies, and then they're signing off this report here that comes to me that it's done, and when they get to here, then that means that all of this is done, that I can give them the adjusted credit for their simulations, for the actual psychomotor simulations. Now, is that just as clear as muddy water or not? I've stunned them all into silence.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Now, see, aren't you grateful to me? I'm taking that last part off of you. As long as you're doing the scenarios, you're doing the hard work and filling in the stuff and then giving me the paperwork, then I'll declare the rest. Yeah, it's a lot of info. But I had to show you how this last part fit in, because then you understand what it is you're trying to achieve during these sim scenarios. You're not just trying to achieve the titles, the topics, or the team leads, or the age groups. You're also trying to make sure that they're getting their hands on those skills all the way through so that I can give them their psychomotor skills credits toward their live patients. Confused and lost. All right, tell me where you're confused and lost. It might be easier if you key the mic. Stephen?
It's just a lot of info to process and go through and trying to figure out exactly what we're supposed to do. So, like I said earlier, the first few sessions will probably be a nightmare to get done, just till we get used to it.
Does it make sense, though, if you go through, once you're into the scenarios part, you're going through this thing in order, you know, some semblance of fives and getting their hands on everything, here, that is not only feeding into this part when you're doing your data entry, but it's feeding at me so I can feed into this part. Because I'm going to take that sheet, once you declare it, I'm trusting you. I'm putting my faith in you that you've got their hands on it, you're making sure they're doing this stuff over and over in these sim scenarios, and then I'm giving them the adjusted credits there. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I just think it's going to be a lot more work on us and on you, and it's just going to be a lot more to deal with. So it's going to take time to get used to it.
Yeah, there is going to be a lot more scenario entry for sure for you guys, because you're going to have to do more scenarios. But it's also going to be split up above for P1, you're actually starting scenarios now, the last half of the first session, you're kind of throwing some in there. Doing the second session is almost all scenarios now. And even in P2, you're starting scenarios at the end of the second session or into the second session going into the third session. And some of them may spill over into P2 testing and P1 testing. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit more work there. It's going to be a little bit more work there on trying to get used to doing the preloaded stuff and doing those basic competencies and stuff, you know, that you have to do at the beginning of each of the P1 session. And then you had a few in P2, but not many. And they really don't have to be done at the very beginning. They just have to be done before you can actually start throwing them in sims and stuff for these yellow things. You know, you just got to remember when you do those and you start those stations in the order that you were before, that you're going to have to build a lab for those real quick and get those out of the way so that then everything else will fill in. So yeah, more work. And I apologize. I wish there was some way around it. I have no choice. And you know what's sad is I took the National Registry requirements and I laid them out up against what these requirements are, in which this is basically Appendix G. Versus, now there's more than Appendix G here, because a lot of our items we had there because they're things we know that we have to work with them on, like BLS airway adjuncts. We found that, you know, if you have 4 students in a group, 3 of them can't put a nasopharyngeal airway in correctly. Correct? So we've got those there. We know we had to. So those are extra over and above Appendix G. But when you take just the Appendix G and lay it out next to what the National Registry said they wanted, I'd say it's over double in Appendix G. They took Appendix G and turned it into a monster. And if you're accredited, you have no choice. Even though National Registry said, hey, here's what we want you to do, and that was palatable. That's what we've been doing for the last 3 years, is building on that particular design. But then COAMS took and built what you see now and decided that this is what they wanted us to do. And we have no choice. If we stay in the business, it's what we have to do. We just have to figure out the best way to make it work, be fun, get it all done, and be able to defend it in the site visits. Yep, we're doing it. And here's how we're doing it. We're very creative. We run scenarios and we do multiple things in the scenarios and we run them around and we move them around and we make it happen. And I can tell you, we're not the only program that's having to figure this out this way. Like I said, I really, really sincerely from the bottom of my heart believe that there are very few programs that can do this the way that it's designed without adding on probably a semester of lab. I don't see any possible way, unless they were just goofing off before and had a bunch of labs sit there they weren't filling, and then they're still not going to do it right. And if anybody wants to make a comment on that, because you've all taught in other programs or been in other programs, you know, I know that Charlinda used to teach in one. Michael, I know you went to our program, but I'm sure you've taught some over at some of the other ones. Kelly, you think I'm way off base here?
I think you're absolutely on base. There's no way that of those 3 million paramedic students that the majority were getting more than this. There's no way. It's not possible.
Yeah. So I think that we have to set our minds to that we're meeting Appendix G. We are meeting the requirements. But in our minds as instructors who care about our students, who care about our program, that we just have to figure out a way to make this where it works, to make it where it's fun, and where when something doesn't make sense to do, oh, good God, this person has flown through this skill. Why do I need to do it 5 more times? I'm crediting you. Let's just move on. We'll hit this somewhere else again and something else. Let's just move on. You know, I don't believe button seat time or how many times you do something means a dang thing, frankly. Any more than button seat time sitting in a classroom means something. You know, you can sit in classroom for 8 hours a day and absorb the first hour of it, and the other 7 hours you slept through. Did it make you any smarter to sit there for that other 7 hours? No, it did not. Or you can be like our students are that come in into our program that really apply themselves, and we have X number of hours set aside to, that is the average that it takes someone to finish that lecture and that homework assignment or research exam, and this student does it in a quarter of the time and makes a 90 or 100 on it. Are they any dumber because they didn't sit there for the other 2 hours it said it required? Jeremy, good question. Is this for all students or just the ones that register from January 1st, 2019 and forward? Okay, that gets us into the other problem area, and this is where you guys are going to have to pipe in. We have students, now for students that are already they're already into their skills. They've already gone P1 days 1 and 2, or they've already done P1 testing. This doesn't apply to them at all because we know we can't change gears on them. And that's great because all the new students have to start at the beginning anyway. However, there are students that are in P2 right now that are coming up on final exam that have not done a single skill station. They waited until now. You also have, and I think I sent an email to you guys about how many people that we had registered as of that time that were starting P1 or were P1 challenges all since January 1st of 2019. So those people definitely have to do these skills. So I will be marking them on the RSVP locking confirmation as to new or not. I guess the word new is short enough, should tell you whether or not they require the new stuff. The problem's going to be with this weird little schedule of having students that are enrolled from before then who are starting skills this year. My opinion is that if they haven't started skills yet, then I go ahead and throw them in as new and put them to work in the new system with all the other newbies. It'll minimize how many people you've got that are mixed in the session with the old schedule. Thoughts? Jeremy, are you saying I agree to Sherlinda or I agree to me? Both.
Yeah, having a mixture of two different kinds is going to be problematic.
I think it is too. That's why I'm thinking that all the students, I'm going to make a change on the website, and if you guys agree that I'm going to tell students if they have not started P1 skills yet, or have not, if they enrolled and have not done their P1 challenge, even if they enrolled before January the 1st of this year, they're going to have to go by the new requirements. Does that sound like something we can all get into? That's not going to completely eliminate it, but I think that's going to cut us down to a dull roar. But it also means that you guys are going to be starting on this a lot sooner. Let me see when the next, I'm going to pull up the schedule here. Calendar. Oh, and I did the same thing on the, just so you know, in Skills Lab paperwork, there's also a file folder under P2 for P2 Skills 2019 that has everything in it you need. Let me get in the calendar here. See where we are. Gosh, I'm hungry. Give it a minute to load up, and then it'll have to pop to the bottom here in a second. Oh, heck, I accidentally hit the stupid settings. Go back out. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in P1 days 1 and 2. Well, no, because sometimes I forget and put P1 practice first, and then sometimes I put P1 days 1 and 2. I don't want to miss anything. It'll take it a minute to load here and go to the bottom. All right. Come on. All righty. It looks like, well, there's this one at the end, but we've already locked for that one, and so we're good there. We've done that. P1 testing. Looks like we're coming up to this one, and I don't have anybody new in it. So I think you're safe for March 2nd and 3rd. Wait a minute. I'm pretty sure you're safe for March 2nd and 3rd. Unless you just, who is that one? That one's you, Michael, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I haven't locked that one yet. It would be better if we could go ahead and start that one with the new stuff. Do you feel like you could try to pull it together and lock it in with that one? I just change it out and tell the folks you're starting with the new stuff. Here you go. Have fun.
Oh,
It would be best if we did, but you know, because you got to start somewhere.
just
And
don't.
that's a brand new group.
Keep the number at not 6.
Try to keep the number down if I can.
Yeah, at least for the first one.
Yep. And now let's see who else and that's, hang on. P1 practice days 1 and 2 again in April. So yeah, it'd be better if we do that. I don't have anything on P1 for you yet, Luann, which I don't see her here. Did she leave? Or is my deal just not showing? Luann, are you still here? Yeah, Luann, I think I'm needing some more stuff scheduled for you anyways coming up. I think we're running out of your schedule. So that's where you'll be starting, I believe. I don't even know what I have for you next. Let me see.
Luann has also posted a question about a contractual obligation. Can we change the requirements after the program is started? And she asked, didn't the student contract at the other level?
Yeah, we can change the skills requirements because all we're changing is we're still doing the same thing. All we're doing is basically changing the order and how they're doing the data entry and making more scenarios. So really, we can, because we're not adding a bunch of stuff that means that they're going to have to jump through hoops to attend extra sessions to get. Now, if it involved us changing the number of hours, like, you know, more skills days, or now instead of 456 hours of rotations, that we're going to have to pull 600, no, we can't do that. But yeah, we can get away with this because we would have more trouble changing if they'd already started skills. That's where we'd have problems. So they haven't signed a contract that says, oh, yes, I'm absolutely getting this number of skills. In fact, their syllabi for skills that they had when they started it is actually pretty vague. The new syllabi is actually really intensely full, showing exactly what they're going to have. The old syllabi did not.
Okay.
So we're okay there. I don't think there'll be any legal anything that we can do. Now, if, like I said, if I changed hours, tacked on days, yeah, we'd have a problem. Let's see. Michael, all Abilene folks, the first one of us has, yeah, that would be you. So, yeah, got that. I was going to add it, see when you have skills. And I think, Jeremy, we're waiting on you to move further out from May or June, I think. But I think Acme was where I'm needing stuff because I got people already asking about you guys. Hang on a second. Come on. Let me move my box here. Yeah, I don't have anything past May for you. And it looks like you're doing P2. So it'll be a while before you have a P1 session, unless you want to start a cycle just so while this stuff is fresh, we can throw some in there. Maybe get some people in there while it's still fresh after kind of delving into this. If you go way down into June and July before you start your first P1 session, this is going to be like starting over again. Just my opinion. Okay, Luann, you get it with everybody. Determine availability. Maybe we could start like in March or April, throw in a P1 cycle starting for you two so it's not too far out. And you guys can work together to try to find your stride, hit your stride with this. I'm 100% certain this can be done. Where it may be a problem is our one-on-ones. We're going to have to play and see. We may end up with at least one day of the one-on-ones or one session like the middle session for P1 days 3 and 4, and maybe the P2 days 5 and 6. That may be where on one-on-ones that one may end up having to be 2 days. The rest of them you could probably squeeze in. I don't know. I'm looking for opinions on that. I'd like for you guys to all kind of think about that and then shoot me some information, some opinions on that, because you guys are teaching this. I haven't been teaching this stuff for a long time. You're the ones who've made this work. You guys took my original plans, put them together, and made something magnificent. So, and it may take a little playing with it for you to get a general feel before we'll have an opinion on that. So we may have to expand those days. But if so, we'll do that. Jeremy, you and Stephen and Brandon, Kelly, and everybody are all cordially invited to join me. We can all suffer together. You'll have 2 students and 6 instructors. That'll be amazing. But it might be the best way to do it, and the students wouldn't mind. They'd love it. So, y'all just let me know what you think is right. And go, when I get off here, let me get you something to write on. I'll give you a minute to write. I need you to write down my username and password for, Platinum, so that you can log in as a student. And the tissues. Somebody's bringing whiskey, somebody's bringing tissues. Is that toilet paper tissues? Yeah. All right. When you go to Platinum, so that you can go play as a student, don't mess with anything else. I trust you. But, it's too easy to get in. If you go in as administrator, you'll really screw some things up. So just click on the student 2019. And that's me. I'm the student. You can add yourself as students. I recommend you add yourself. Add, each other. That way you have multiple students so you can see how the peer review stuff plays. It's my email address, I believe. Wait a minute. Un momento. Yeah, my email address, program director at percomonline.com. And the password should be plural, lowercase, Junebugs. JUNEBUGS. Also, I recommend you go to the Skills Lab paperwork, find the 2019 folders, look through all that stuff, get to know all that paperwork. And Sherry said she should have the P1 2019 books ready by the end of this week. She's making a set for you, Sherlinda, so that when you're ready, you'll have your books already. She's making a set for Abilene. She's making a set for Gabe, who's not here. She's making a set for Luann for your group, and she's going to ship those out. But in the meantime, everything she's making a book set of is in the 2019 Skills Lab folder for P1 and the one in P2. The only thing that's not in there is going to be the P2 summative testing scenarios and P1 summative testing scenarios. You can use those out of the old books until we get all the old people out, and then we'll just move them over to the new book. Because I don't care which scenarios you use for those, because we'll have everything else accounted for. Then you can use those other new scenarios, which were kind of variations on a theme from before. You can use some of them then for testing, just to make sure they can hit the ground running. All right, I'm going to go down the list one at a time here and see if there are any questions. Starting with you, Brian. Questions, comments, anything you need?
No, ma'am, they're not at this point. I'm sure I will somewhere down the road. I think that I'm at a point where I need to get my fingers on it and see how I can break it, and then ask questions from there. One
thing I will mention about for you guys, all of you, is make sure that scenario sims are as hands-on as possible. A mannequin there, they're having to start the IVs, they're having to push the drugs, they're having to defibrillate, all of that. That's what that's all about. So when we say sims, that's what we're talking about. If we just use the word scenario, it's that little, hey, you've got a 68-year-old male that can't speak, he can't talk, he's coughing, nope, he's squeaking. What do you do? Go. That's a scenario. But the sims, you got to get their hands on the mannequins or on each other or whatever it takes. All right, Stephen.
No, I'm like Brian. It's a lot to take in, and it's going to take getting used to.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? I can see that with shifting more to the scenarios other than the paperwork part of it, This could actually be a hell of a lot of fun. Jeremy?
Oh, not yet, but I will.
Don't sound so depressed, my friend. Oh, speaking of which, Jeremy, you, the tablets. Sherry hasn't put them in the lab or in the locked room of the lab because the doorknob's still laying there to be changed. And some of this may be hard to do on a phone. So those tablets are probably going to get put to good use. We need to get them in there, make sure we've got a way to keep them charged without keeping them on chargers all the time so that it blows the batteries up. And we need to probably have those ready for these sessions.
Well, and we're okay to put that knob on that storeroom door?
Yeah, just make sure she gets the keys so she can make keys for all of the skills lab instructors, me, her, and for our new leaseors.
Okay. I wasn't for sure. I saw it sitting up there the other day, and I nearly put it on when I was putting all the mannequins back together. And then I decided I probably ought to ask first, which is odd for me. But
Yeah, she bought it. She bought it for you to put on, and then that way we need to make sure those tablets always stay locked up since we've already had 3 of them stolen.
Right. Okay, not a problem.
All right, Lou, how about you? You still got tablets, Lou, right?
She's not able to speak, so she'll probably be typing something for you.
Yeah, I'm good for now. Like Brian, we have to work with it. Yes, you have tablets. Excellent. And Kelly, I know you're new. I don't even know if everybody realizes you're coming in, and I should have introduced you. Kelly Batangan is actually coming in learning from Michael right now. She's looking at trying to help out some with the P1 starting off, P2 maybe, skills, just kind of looking around, seeing if she can help us out and start learning. We'd love to have her come help us with some of the skills, take some of the load off, and she's very talented. She and Sherlinda, who is also here, have also taken over the CE program that still hasn't got anybody signed up in it. So just throwing that out there too, that we've got that new CE program that's a weekly live webinar. All the hours count toward National Registry. So you don't have that distributive hour cap, interactive, fun stuff, kind of like we do the chat rooms. So if y'all know anybody that wants in a CE program, they're the ladies that are teaching it, but we haven't gotten it off the ground yet because nobody's enrolled. So Kelly, do you have any questions or anything?
No, not currently yet. I'm just trying to absorb all of it.
Yeah, it's a lot, I know. Don't let it overwhelm you. Michael, did I pick on you?
No, I'll figure it out as we go, I guess.
Yeah, poor Michael. You'd be the first one. But look at it this way. It's better than going to the dentist and getting all your teeth pulled. And you do get paid well for it. Look at it that way. It's just, and guys, I wish I could pay you more for the extra headaches. But, to be honest, we got a lot of competition out there. And we're all just trying to hang on. And so we do a good job. But, even the 101s are extremely exorbitantly expensive for the students as it is. And even so, a lot of them ask for it and they have to pay for it. But, y'all get the majority of that cash. Actually, you get all of it and then some. So just remember that, those when you're getting paid, you're working hard, but I pay you good, or at least I think I do. And, eventually, maybe I can pay you better if we can ever just get things settled out and where we can get our market share back. But you guys are doing a good job. And the students constantly rave about the skills labs and about how much they learn and about how talented you all are. And I'm so fortunate, we are so fortunate to have you. And I want to thank each of you for what you do. So unless y'all have some more questions or anything, I think that's pretty much all of the punishment I can give you today. Anything?
I have no questions here.
All right, guys. Thank you all for coming and spending time with me. And I guess we'll be getting this first session locked in here pretty quick, Michael. We'll work on getting stuff posted for the students because I got to make some changes on the course website about that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just keep it gentle.
Yeah, keep it gentle.
2, 3, perhaps.
I will do my best. Sure, Linda, maybe I'll scare them to death whenever I put that. So Sherlinda, yeah, I'm going to post it. I'll send you guys a YouTube link for it because Brandon's not here. And of course, Garrett couldn't be here. So we've got to cut, and Gabe's not here. So we've got a few people missing that are still teaching skills that have to try to catch up with everybody else on this. Go big or go home, Michael. That's what Jeremy says. All right. Thank you all.
Hey, Jane.
Yeah?
Gabe just sent me that file I needed, so I don't need it.
Okay, great. Thank you.